Welcome to the Meadowlands Chamber of Commerce Emerging Leaders podcast, aimed at helping you excel and take your professional career to the next level. Sponsored by Henry Kaminsky Jr. and www.uniquedesigns.net. Now, let's get into today's show.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Henry Kaminsky here with another Emerging Leaders podcast. I got my man, Fernando Valencia in the house. What's shaking, my man?
Rockin', rollin', excited to be here with you and our special guest all the way from Washington, D.C. Tell us a little bit more about her, Henry.
Yes, so we have the amazing Jennifer Holdsworth. She is the Senior VP of Issues Management at MWW PR. That is some title, Jennifer, so we got to dive in and extract all of this. What is going on, my friend?
Hi, I am so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you've been invited via our buddy, Jim Kirkos. So one thing I love about doing these podcasts is I do minimal research on the guest because I really want the conversation to be super fluid and just super natural and authentic. So for those folks, because I don't know you from Adam, and I want to really learn more about you on the show and have our guests learn more about the show. But I want to, you've climbed the ranks in a very short period of time. And I want to hear how you got into the government space and where your love for, handling a very tough topic like politics and issues management. And how do you juggle that all?
Right. Well, I have a great affection for our buddy Jim. I've known him since God was a boy. So I'm very excited that he invited me to join you all today. So incredibly long story short, I've had an interest in politics and government since I was very, very young. It's secret from my CV, from my resume, that I'm a Democrat. I've actually been a Democrat since the womb. But my grandfather was very involved in New Jersey politics. And when I was born, he was sworn in as the Secretary of the New Jersey Senate. And when I was about 3 years old, I insisted that my parents take me to his swearing in. I got to hold the Bible when he was sworn in, and my parents just swear that it was transferred right then. But no, growing up, just having an incredible interest in history, government, and politics. I was probably, the only 11-year-old that, made my parents put the acceptance speech of the Democratic National Convention on the television during vacation. So,
I love it.
I've been quite a nerd for quite a long time, but really learned how to embrace it. So for me, there was, no other question about, what industry I'd be drawn to. And it's a wide and varying industry. I think that's one of the things that, attracts me to it so much. You deal with so many issues and so many topics on a daily basis that it's never boring. So you actually not only become a jack of all trades, but you have to become a master of all trades, because when you're advising people and you are learning all of these policies and all these topics, you have to do a lot of research to learn as much as you can. You need to learn how to teach. You need to learn how to, understand a great amount of very complex information and condense it and be able to explain it in layman's terms. And that's one of the things I love about advising candidates. And that's one of the things I love about having candidates due to the general voting population. So this really is, a huge interest in history and policy and how American government works, translated into, a passion. And so I'm very, very lucky that I'm able to, do something that I love every single day as a career.
Beautiful. Fernanda, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, for sure. So a lot of things really, pop out at me. And one of the things that screams is, that creative ability that you have to get a message across, to really, as you mentioned, condense it, put it down and give it back where another human being and all these different community members can receive it. What message creatively, what what message did you hear that you said, I'm passionate about this, I want to get this message across? And creatively, how do you do that? I see myself as someone who's rewriting the narrative for the human race. So you're really tickling a wire on a personal level on what you do and how you do it. So creatively, how do you tap into that passion to give this message in a way that other people are going to receive it the way you want to receive it?
So I'm going to give you a really long, drawn out answer to this one, but I'll do my best to keep it as short as I can. So throughout my career, politics itself has become an overtly controversial topic, right? Like it didn't used to be as personal as it is now. But what I have always told people and what I have learned from other people is that you don't have to be partisan to be political. The political space is about learning policy and then taking that policy and discussing it with other people. Politics is about relationship management. Politics is about learning how to negotiate and learning how to compromise. Politics is about, taking something that you're passionate about and creating a grassroots movement to address it. Politics is about a lot of different things, and politics also affects our daily life, whether you think about it or not, whether you think that you're involved in politics or not. When you walk outside, the air that you breathe is affected by politics. When you're driving in a car, the safety of that car is affected by politics. When you turn on the water in your house or you eat the food in your house, all of that on some level is affected by policy and politics. So my major message that inspires me most, that I like to tell other people, is doesn't have to be, conservative or liberal when you're talking about politics. You can talk about generally living your daily life. And that's how you make it about the person, but not personal. And I always like to demystify politics for people. They think that it's something untouchable or unattainable or secret or too high level. And when I actually explain to people how accessible the political process really is, I think that's something that's very inspiring to folks and motivating for them to get involved.
Beautiful. So that was really well said, and it wasn't long and drawn out. What are you talking about?
To the point. Her long is my like micro.
That's why she's the senior VP of issues management. She knows how to just say it and get it done.
Well, it landed to me. I get it.
I'm also a recovering lawyer here, so I have to, make sure.
I love it. I love it. So I have a question. In your role as an aide to political leaders, right, is there any issue that really made you super passionate about serving government?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's been a couple throughout the years. So when I was much, much younger, for me, it was about a place in history. I was very obsessed with sort of federal politics, government presidencies and the Senate. And, I would go down to Washington when I was in high school and college and, just really feel a sense of history. The decisions that were being made seemed really, really important to me. As I got a little older in my early 20s, I took a very keen interest in local politics because it occurred to me that a lot of the day-to-day of what we were experiencing could be affected on a local level. Everything from environmentalism to taxes to open space and parks and sprawl. So my interest, without being too controversial here, one of the main issues that I work on is choice, and it's a very controversial topic. But it is initially women's health care and choice is what drew me into the political process at a very young age. From there, it became student loans. I was bogged down by student loans, by law school loans, and trying to figure out, how am I going to pay these back? I feel like I did the right thing, by getting my education and, by going to professional school and trying to establish a career and make sure that I was educated. And now, I'm crippled by these loans. It's preventing me from buying a house. It's preventing me from, moving. It's preventing me from upward mobility in society. And I'm extremely lucky. I'm extremely privileged that I had a very supportive family. I lived at home while I went to school. So I started thinking about, other people who didn't have that opportunity and they were even deeper in debt than I was. And it didn't seem fair for the return. So that's another issue that I became extremely passionate about. I also graduated law school in 2008, which was right into the middle of the economic meltdown of the country and the world. And so that was a very important time to think about, the general fairness of our economic industry. These are very specific topics that I'm passionate about. But I would say the one main thing that drew me to politics was just a sense of history and having an effect on that.
Okay, so very well put, and I can feel that passion coming through for sure. Now, you talked about how easy it is to access the government process. My question is, how do we help our listeners by sharing? Can you help our listeners by sharing how they can do just that, regardless of what side of the aisle they're on?
Sure. Okay, so here's where my long-windedness will come in. I promise this one's not going to be short. I'm going to start with my bio here because I think that'll make my answer to this question a little easier. I knocked my first door in 1997. I was in high school. And what that means is that when there's a campaign ongoing for political office, and it doesn't matter what political office that is, there's a field program for that candidate. And what that means is that you send out volunteers who believe in that candidate to knock on doors before election day and say, hey, did you know there's an election? This is the candidate I'm supporting. I'd like you to support that candidate as well. Can I count on your vote? You literally go door to door and you read from a script and make sure that that person is going to get out and vote for your candidate on election day. Something as simple as that. I think you make like $25 or $50 a shift when you do that. It takes 4 hours to knock, all those doors that they've assigned to you. When you come back to the headquarters after having done that, there's a very good chance that the candidate is going to be in the headquarters, whether you're talking about, a school board or local city council, if you're talking about a freeholder race, which is the regional countywide legislative body in New Jersey, whether it's a state legislative race for assembly or senate, if it's a gubernatorial race, if it's a congressional race, all of these campaigns have the ability to bring in volunteers and make phone calls and knock doors, right? So that's really the very, very first job I ever had in politics.
I love it.
I was a volunteer for the field program, knocking on doors, dragging them out to vote. In college, I was able to run phone banks on my college campus. I went to Rowan University in New Jersey, which is in southern New Jersey. Mm-hmm. I would run phone banks for whatever, candidate was going on. And I would go to the local Democratic organization or the countywide Democratic organization and, just volunteer my time and start meeting people as much as possible. When I graduated college, I used some of the connections that I had made from volunteering on those various campaigns to land a job as an assistant on the campaign of the Bergen County freeholder race. So that was in 2003. I'm pretty sure that's when I met our friend, Mr. Kirkos, which seems like a very long time ago here. The other thing about political campaigns is that they are by nature very short. So if you looked at anybody else's resume at any other industry and they had a job for only 3 months, you would say, what on earth is going on and what happened to this job, right? In politics, campaigns are not that long. They're anywhere from 3, 6 to 9 months, and 12 if you're working on like a huge statewide, longer if it's a presidential. But local races are very short. They start within 3 to 6 months. You do as much as you can. So in 2003, that was my first time actually staffing a candidate. And what that means is that you drive them to their various events. You make sure that they have coffee before they get to their event. You're standing at train stations at 4 o'clock in the morning, handing out literature to potential voters and saying, hey, let's learn more about this candidate. I'd like you to vote for me. You're going to town days and parades and local community meetings and church services and any other community event that you could possibly think of. You're staffing the candidates at these events. And this was my first experience doing that, and I fell in love with it because you get a lot of face time with these candidates. That's the first time I realized how accessible government figures really were, because they want to be in your community. There's sort of this pervasive narrative in the media right now that, elected officials are elite and they're not listening to the people and they're all wealthy. And, I found out firsthand that couldn't be further from the truth. There's also this, sort of, it's not really a joke, but again, it's a narrative that the media pushes that Congress only works, 130 days a year, and that's it. And I get always personally offended when I hear that, because, not only did I see them actually in session, doing their jobs and voting on legislation, but then on the weekends they would fly home and they would have 12 to 15 events on Saturday and Sunday. They barely get to spend any time with their families. So I found on a very local level, when I was staffing, freeholder candidates, state legislative candidates, and congressional candidates, that, they are some of the hardest working, people I've ever met. And, learning what it is that they actually do with their time is one of the things that made me even more passionate about being involved.
Wow. So I'm really, taking a lot of time I'm being intentional with some of the words that you've been choosing. And it's so empowering to see how you've been able to really infiltrate and be around and create this ecosystem for yourself, Jennifer. It's really impressive. One of the things that really resonate with me, is how you say the word people a lot, community, connections. When you first started, you would volunteer, you would door knock and talk to people. And one of the words that you said early on in the conversation was relationship management. That's what you said is like the bread and butter, the key. And, all of us here, Jim, Henry, myself, we pride ourselves in building these relationships. And I call it community currency, relationship currency. How can you say, to all our listeners, because we love empowering the future here at the Emerging Leaders, we're all about leadership. How can the future leaders of tomorrow that are listening to this, that are inspired and motivated by you, how can you help them equip better relationship management skills? What would you say are the tactical ways a leader can implement relationship management skills?
So some of it is real nitty gritty stuff, right? And it's stuff that I've learned over the years. Developing a habit of immediately responding to business cards that you collect. That's something that seems so simple, but it's super important. So if you want to get involved in politics or government or really whatever industry, you're going to go to some networking events. In politics, a lot of that are, fundraisers or, like I said, community days. And not only are you going to collect business cards for whomever you're staffing, but you're going to meet a lot of other staff yourself, right? There's going to be other, members there, and their staff is going to be there. Hoard business cards. I'm telling you right now, absolutely hoard them. Collect as many as you can. Now, here's the little trick that's the annoying part. The minute we're very lucky that we have access to, smartphones, things like that. Now I'm going to sound like an absolute grandma when I say when I first started in this business, we didn't have that. We didn't have smartphones. We didn't have immediate access to email. Yeah. We had to sort of go back and do it. But now we do have it, right? So when you leave an event and you've collected business cards, get into your car, type an email to every single person you collected a business card from, and recall an anecdote about the conversation you had to remind them who you are. Okay, so if you collected 10 business cards, sit in your car, turn the radio on for a half hour before you even, put it in drive, send out these emails. You might get 4 or 5 responses back. Maybe you'll even get 2 responses back. There's other people who they'll just get busy and they won't respond, right? And that's okay. Don't be offended by that. Don't think that you're not important because they didn't answer you back. If you even get 1 email back, that's 1 more connection that you didn't have before you went to that event, right? And it doesn't have to be a sort of gross kind of way. It doesn't have to be, what can you do for me, or a quid pro quo. It can simply be, hey, it was great to meet you. I really, enjoyed talking to you about whatever it is you talked about. Wasn't this event great? Would love to get together for coffee sometime. Let me know when your schedule is. Or, if I can help you out in any way, let me know what that is. I'm happy to help you out. So it's simply by just establishing a connection with the folks that you meet. And that's how I have, personally grown my own career, is to, just make sure that you are keeping in touch with those folks that you've met. And then, just making sure that once a year you're touching base with them, because as you move on and as you progress, what you don't want to do is say, oh, you know what? I don't need that connection anymore. I already got what I needed from that. I'm going to move on now. That absolutely is not the case for two reasons. Number one, that just makes you a sucky human. Number two, you never know who your boss is going to be one day. And, you may have somebody who works as an intern for you who then, gets a job on the next Senate campaign, and all of a sudden that person runs for president. So you never, ever know who your boss is going to be. So a general rule in politics is just be nice.
Yeah.
That's a simple way to put it.
Listen, never burn a bridge. I'm a big believer of that. The other thing that I want to add into what you were saying, Jennifer, is I believe in this philosophy of 51-49. And I learned this from our good old pal, Gary Vaynerchuk. But when he talks about building relationships with people, he always wants to put in 51% into that relationship. Yep. And I know that there's a lot of folks out there that live with these philosophies. Well, I'm not getting paid. That's not what I get paid for. I'm not putting in the extra effort. The hell with that. That's not in my job description. You can hear it. You hear it 1,000 times a day, right? And my philosophy is very similar to the 51-49. I always want to give above and beyond, because you know what? That above and beyond is an investment towards my future. Like you never know who that person's going to become, where you're going to see them again. And I think those little things, those little bits of going the extra mile, they go 10, they go 20, they go 50 in the long run when you invest in relationships. And I think that is so, so important. So as we turn the corner, sort of wrap up today's episode, my biggest question for you personally was, how does one get to the senior VP of issues management in a very reputable PR firm?
Right. So I'll lay out the rest of my bio pretty quickly here. So I talked about how I was involved after college and on a local level working for the freeholder race. I then started working for a United States congressman from New Jersey. His name was Steve Rothman. A lot of people don't know that congresspersons and senators not only have offices in Washington, D.C., but they also have offices back in their home states and their home districts. I was the staff assistant in home district, rose up to congressional aide, and then took some time to go to law school. But while I was in law school, I continued to volunteer on campaigns, and I volunteered in different ways. I would do voter protection, which is on election day, lawyers go and they represent voters who were disenfranchised in some way. I would, help staff the freeholders at events. I would help run fundraisers. So, staying involved, at a lower level, it doesn't say anything about how your career is advancing. So, one of the other biggest, lessons that I learned is that you're never too high up in a hierarchy not to do the lowest available job on a campaign. And that'll serve you well no matter where you go, because people will see you as reliable, but you'll also have great experiences. So I continued to work on campaigns through law school. When I graduated law school, I clerked for a Bergen County Superior Judge in the criminal division. While I was in law school, I actually developed an expertise in human trafficking law. I spent time at the Rwandan War Crimes Tribunal, working for a prosecutor named Judge Tagreed Hikmet. And that's where I learned how to develop a policy expertise to really learn, a lot of complex information in a short amount of time. From there, I went back to working on campaigns. I opened up my own consultancy, JC Strategies. I was doing fundraising. I was doing field work, which is that door knocking, grassroots stuff. I was doing some politics and policy for various local candidates when I got my first job as a campaign manager. And so that's the person who's in charge of the whole kit and caboodle of the campaign. After that, I went back to the government side. So, in politics, there's the government side, which is, actually working for whatever legislative body or congressional body. Then there's the politics side, which is, purely campaigning. And those two things are very separate. a lot of people in politics go back and forth between working on the two different sides. After I was done doing campaigns for a few years, I switched back over to the government side when I took a job as a Director of Policy and Communications for an Assemblywoman Valerie Vaneri Huddle, who represents a district in northern New Jersey. I spent 2 years there. I took a leave of absence to serve as the Deputy Political Director on the 2013 gubernatorial election in New Jersey. When I left the legislature, I took a job as the Political Director of the New Jersey Democratic State Committee. From there, I served as the 2014 Coordinated Director for Senator Cory Booker's reelection. I served at the New Jersey Democratic State Committee, and for those of you who don't know, every single, so you've heard of the DNC and the RNC, right? The Democratic National Committee and the Republican National Committee. Every state also has a Democratic committee and a Republican committee. Every county has a Democratic committee and a Republican committee. Every town has a Democratic committee and a Republican committee. And that's just for the two major parties. There are other committees for other parties that exist. The Justice Democrats, Democratic Socialists, Libertarian Party, Tea Party. So all of these organizations have political structures. I happen to be the political director of the Democratic State Committee in the state of New Jersey, which runs the finance and election arm for all Democrats across the state. From there, I started getting very, very involved in the Democratic National Committee. I would travel to conferences, and again, with that relationship management, meet as many people as I could, which allowed me to start fundraising for candidates nationwide. I then was named the New Jersey State Director for Hillary Clinton when she was running for president in 2016. After the unfortunate end of that race, depending on which side you were on, I moved out to South Bend, Indiana. I had met a young man named Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who has sort of an incredible career. He's an incredible person, and he wanted to run for DNC chair. We wanted a new generation of leadership to sort of take over our party. That is really where I expanded a lot of my national contacts. From there, I started serving as the National Political and Finance Director for Congressman Seth Moulton, who started a PAC called Serve America PAC, which recruited Democratic veterans to run for Congress. As you might know, Democrats retook control of Congress in the midterms in 2018, and I fundraised for a lot of those candidates who won. From there, I was deciding whether or not I wanted to take a leadership role in the 2020 presidential election for a candidate, because those campaigns, believe it or not, were spinning up already. I decided to be an outside advisor. And instead, my dear friend and mentor, and someone who I respect and have looked up to for years, named Michael Kempner, who's the founder and CEO of MWW PR, had been explaining to me the needs within the corporate community of learning how to be civic-minded. And to make sure that they were being, involved in corporate responsibility. As I'm sure that you've seen over the last few years, a lot of companies are very, very aware that their brand matters based on the stances that they are taking. So you've seen Dick's Sporting Goods, remove guns from their shelves. You've seen Nike lean into the Colin Kaepernick controversy and Black Lives Matter. You've seen, Gillette make a moving commercial in the era of Me Too. So you're seeing a lot of companies sort of lean into civic awareness in the country right now. And so I was brought on to not only give my advice to those type of things, but to generally be a representative of MWW PR in the political space. So I continue to make sure that everybody knows the amazing sort of work that MWW PR does. We stay involved in the political process, but we also help our clients reach that next level through that type of political branding.
Wow. All right. Okay. Hold on. I need like a 3-second process. Do we have like another like
information there?
Say that one more time.
A lot of information there.
No, a lot of value in that. That's what it is. It's like my neural system is like shocked with knowledge at the moment. So I need to take a second to process. I think we got like 10 more minutes. We have time for one more question there, Henry?
Let's get it in. I don't know if we have 10 minutes left because I have to get to a meeting, but you could throw it in.
Just really want to take it in a quick direction, and we're gonna hit the concise version. One thing that I'm getting from you, through listening is, once again, is you seem to have this amazing ability to make decisions. You bounce from one thing to another, one decision to another, one candidate to another. And you've been able to make these amazing decisions, have this amazing roadmap, this resume that's like, whoa. To me, it feels like that's a lifetime already. And from your voice and your tone and your energy, you're just getting started, girl. Like, you're just at the beginning of it all. You're just like right at the cusp. How would you say, because I really want our leaders in the future and everyone that's listening to walk away with another tactic besides relationship management. How would you say, listening and being present, as you said, reaching out to every business card, and one anecdote that you remember from the event to stand out. How would you say effective listening, as much as communication is what you do in PR and writing and narrative, how important would you say listening is to building relationships and being able to make the decisions and the roadmap that you've made? I'm sure so many of our viewers are trying to connect the dots, and you've done it so eloquently. It sounds like, how would you say listening and being present and connecting that civic duty and wanting to do more for the world has impacted your ability to just do all this so fast?
Very, very much so. It's vital. So I'm not afraid to say here, I'm 37. I, like I said, knocked my first door in 1997, which was a little over 21 years ago. So it does seem like I've been around this business for a very long time, but I'm still very young, right? And I am just getting started. And I think, to your question, effective listening is important in two ways. Number one, which was probably a little more standard, is to make sure that you are understanding what somebody is asking from you, whether that's a candidate, whether that's a voter, whether that's somebody that you're trying to establish a relationship with. Try not to steer the conversation towards what you want. Make sure that you're being very, very, very attentive to what it is that other people are saying, because you're also going to pick up intel that way for yourself, right? And for possibly the person that you're working for, or for the organization that you're advocating for. You're going to find out information that way that's going to be very beneficial to the cause that you're working on. But I also want to talk about effective listening to yourself. In a business, just like politics, there are a lot of times where you can go astray. There are a lot of times that you can make the wrong decision. You won't always make the right decision. And I'm not talking about criminality or corruption or anything like that, because I'll just assume that all the emerging leaders here have, the best intentions going forward, even to start. But effective listening to what your own inner voice is telling you, not just about the issues that you're working on, but about the people that you're working for and the decisions that you're going to make in your career. So, while it sounds like I've got it all together, it wasn't always that way. Sometimes you make wrong decisions about your career. Sometimes you work for the wrong person. It's very important that you don't think that has ruined all the work that you've done before, or it's ruined your chances to do all the good work in the future that you're going to, want to work on. So, just make sure that if you are listening to yourself and you want to course correct, you do it. And you do not let anybody else tell you that you shouldn't do it, because it's very, very important to follow your own heart. One of the most recent things I've taken on in the last year is I've started commentating on television. I'm a frequent commentator on Bloomberg News, on Fox News, and on a internet morning show called Hill TV Live, where I discuss the hot political topics of the day. There were a lot of folks who told me, whatever you do, don't do Fox News. We don't like Fox News. They stand for something. But it was very, very important to me to be able to have a conversation with people that don't necessarily agree with me and to keep it civil. There were many times when people told me not to go to law school. It was going to be too expensive and it wasn't worth it. And, women got treated poorly. And, unless you were going to actually practice law, it was a waste. But it's one of my favorite things that I ever did. Yeah. I got told not to work for certain candidates. I got told not to leave politics and, go back into government. So, you're not always going to be sure of yourself in the decisions that you're making. But what you need to understand is, once the decision is made, follow it through, take whatever you can, do your best. But if you need to course correct, you go ahead and do that. And you don't let anybody make you feel bad for doing it. Even if that means switching careers entirely. You're never going to get fired for giving your opinion. You're never going to get fired for asking for a raise. You're never going to get fired for making sure that somebody you're working for sees the value that you're bringing to something. Don't be pompous, don't be arrogant, but make sure that you know your worth and make sure that you're listening to yourself as you progress in your career.
What a way to close the show. Wow. Beautiful work, Jennifer. What a doll. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're very welcome.
Dropping your wisdom and knowledge and experience for all of our emerging leaders out there that are listening and tuning in on a weekly basis. Whew, that got me fired up. I cannot wait to get to my next meeting. I'm coming in there with some juice, man. Well, with all that said, thanks again for being an amazing guest. I just want to close out with a couple housekeeping things. One is May 8th at the Venetian. We have the Bergen County Small Business Expo, followed by the Meadowlands Millennial Mastermind, which myself and Fernando Valencia will be keynoting. Super excited for that. So make sure you get your tickets for the expo and the mastermind. A couple other things. One is I would love to have you write a written review on iTunes if you've been following this podcast since its inception. That gives us a lot of feedback, and we read every single one, and we appreciate the comments and the feedback, because we want to be able to bring you as much value and talk about things that you want to hear. So drop those comments and reviews when you can. And last but not least, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We produce episodes every week. However, we roll them out in a very strategic way. So just make sure you get that subscribe button hit so you can get notified when we release a new episode. So have an amazing, amazing day, guys. And we'll catch you on the next episode soon. Take care.
You've been listening to the Meadowlands Chamber of Commerce Emerging Leaders Podcast, sponsored by Henry Kaminsky Jr. and www.uniquedesigns.net. Don't forget to subscribe and stay connected with us by visiting www.meadowlands.org.